We have some big news to cover today as recent reports have linked David Savard to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to discuss those reports as well as highlight whether or not he'll be a good fit for this team going forward. So break that down in this episode, as well as Fraser Minten. We have a major prospect update regarding him. So you're going to want to stay tuned for all that. Before we do get into the video, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. I bet 80% of you guys who are watching right now are not subscribed. We make daily Leafs videos. All right, Darius, let's get into the first topic of the day, which is Leafs linked to David Savard. Now, he's a guy who we haven't spoken about yet on this channel, and a couple of articles have come out highlighting the fit that Brad Treliving could look to acquire him. He does have an extra year of term, which is something we've discussed heavily on this channel, and something Brad Treliving's discussed as well. Now, I'll highlight a couple of reports. This is the first one here. The Toronto Maple Leafs could look, as you can see right here, the Canadians and Toronto Maple Leafs don't often hook up to make trades, but this could be a fit. And then The Athletic also posted an article saying Savard is the kind of intimidating presence that the Leafs have long wanted, especially for the playoffs. Now, Darius, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think he would be a good fit, and do you believe and buy that maybe the Canadians could trade with the Leafs?
In terms of would they trade with the Leafs, I think it's definitely possible. I don't think that teams really like trading in their own division, but if the trade makes sense, we've seen it before. We've seen it in the West a bunch. So I think if it makes sense, it could happen for sure. But in terms of the player Savard is, he fits exactly what the Leafs need. We've talked about it for, a month at this point at length. He's a right shot defenseman, and he's a big one at that. He's a Stanley Cup champion. I think 2-time Stanley Cup champion, actually. I could be wrong, but definitely won it with Tampa. The only downside I would see is he did miss some time already this year with a fractured left hand. So he hasn't played a lot. There's a very small sample size on, again, a not so great Montreal Canadiens team. So in terms of the player himself, he does fit exactly what the Leafs need. Big physical presence, right shot defenseman there on the right side. But in terms of, contract and will the Habs make a trade with the Leafs, that is yet to be seen. I'm not sure that teams are too over the moon making trades within their own division. So it would be interesting to see. And I think if the Habs did want to let Savard go, because, there are other contenders in the league, they could trade him around. They would want the pot sweetened a little bit. And if you're the Leafs, you probably don't want to give up too much for a guy like David Savard at this point in his career. Not saying he's a bad player. It's just the point he's at.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was getting at as well. And you can see within this article, it kind of says similar things to what you say. His cap hit is $3.5 million. He signed for one more season. So the Leafs, in theory, would get 2 playoff runs. And like you said, his last playoff run with Tampa ended with a Stanley Cup. He is 33 years old right now. The underlying numbers haven't been great. And the biggest thing with Savard, and you mentioned it, I was going to bring it up myself, is the injury issue. Of course, Treliving wants to sign or trade for a guy who's going to be here for ideally at least a year after this, and this would fit that bill perfectly. But if you're trading within your division, you suspect, like you said, that the price will be lifted up. And if I'm not sure David Savard is necessarily the guy whose price you want to be paying a super premium for, given his injury history, not only this season, but a couple times. Back in 2020, he only played 14 games. So you can see his stats here. He's been fairly durable the past couple seasons with the Canadians, playing 62 games twice. But at his age, 33 years old, the way he plays, super physical. He's 6 foot, almost 6'1". He's a physical player, and he's bound to get banged up. And at this point of his career, is that something you want to risk paying a premium price for? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like you said, do you want to pay a premium price for David Savard? Would you rather pay that price for higher end talent, younger talent, maybe even, more physical defensemen?
Yep.
I think you'd rather go that route. This is still an option for the Leafs. I just think that the Habs are going to go, you know what? You want this guy? You're going to give us exactly what we want. And I'm not sure Brad Treliving is in the business of doing that and doing favors for other teams, which is a good thing. You don't want a GM doing favors. We just had a GM in Toronto that did a lot of favors to a lot of players, and they got burned a lot. So I'm not sure you want to be doing favors for players or teams. I think you want to put the best possible team together. So I'm not sure this makes sense in terms of money, and, the term and all that, and the fact that you might have to sweeten the pot. But again, in terms of the actual player, like, I wouldn't be necessarily mad if they ended up getting him, depending on the return, because he's exactly what they need. He is pretty much exactly what they need, and you would get him until the end of next year, barring a trade or anything like that, or injury, LTIR, all that stuff. Robert Island, that's an option too next year, if things go south. But yeah, I just don't know if I don't know if they would pull trigger on that, because the Habs are going to ask a lot for him.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Obviously, this season he's been fairly injured, only playing 6 games. But this, as you can see right here at the bottom of this article, he joined his teammates' practice a few days ago and appears near 100%. So I would not be surprised. And one quick thing before we do move on here, you briefly mentioned it. What return would you be comfortable trading for Savard, or rather, what kind of package do you think he's gonna require? I guess specifically for the Leafs, but in general, given what we've seen from Zadorov, and especially at the point that it's not the trade deadline, so if they want to get him early, it might cost a premium. I don't know what you'd be comfortable with if you're the Leafs. Do you have any quick thoughts on that?
Comfortable, I would say like something similar to Zadorov, just because I think he brings a lot of value in the same type of player as Zadorov. He's not as big as Zadorov, but again, he, brings the same type of play. So something similar to that. I think he'll get that on the open market if the Habs explore trading him. But at the end of the day, if you're the Leafs, the Habs are going to be asking for probably a little bit of a higher draft pick. I'm not saying a first round pick or anything, but you're looking at like a second or a third. That is pretty steep, and they might even ask for a prospect. And again, they have some prospects they can trade away that they're still working on. But if you're the Leafs, I don't think you want to trade away anything high or significant like that.
I agree. It's probably going to take that. And I would personally have rather Nikita Zadorov than David Savard, but we might be at a point now where the Leafs are getting in desperation mode as we continue to approach trade deadline, which is still a couple months away in early March. But that'll wrap that section up. Let's quickly discuss now Fraser Minten. We have a pretty big prospect update regarding him in the World Juniors, and obviously the World Juniors are starting to ramp up a little bit now. Also, we saw the Leafs get a big win yesterday, but focusing on Fraser Minten here. Darius, it's looking like he might make the team. Easton Cowan is also. Cowan was on Canada's third line with Berkey and Wood for the final game against the U Sports in Oakville today. Minten, again, a scratch, one of the few times that's a good thing, leading to the belief that Fraser Minten could actually be fully making the team. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any quick thoughts on how Minten's been playing? We can quickly discuss his impact again for the Leafs, but this seems to be a good sign, and we're getting close to Fraser Minten time.
Yeah, it looks like he could, possibly make the team next year. He's been showing out, and like you said, he's scratched in their final. Team Canada does this weird thing every year where they play the U Sports teams just as like a buffer to get ready for the World Juniors. So they're doing that little circuit right now in Oakville. They had their final game last night, and again, Cowan's playing on the third line, so they're still giving him a look, and he's not really playing that high in the lineup. Mitten's scratched. To me, that's a sign you've made the team. We don't have to look at you anymore. Let's, get some rest in before the real thing starts in a few weeks. Which is a really good sign. I'm not too surprised with that's how things have been going. But it's nice to see, at least they're giving Cowan a look. He hasn't been cut yet. It looks like he'll probably make the team, considering he's on that third line, because there were still some players that'll probably make the team playing. But yeah, for Fraser Minten, that's a great sign. He's scratched. We've seen everything we need to see. You're on the team. I'm not saying that for sure, but that's exactly what it's looking like. So if you're a Leafs fan, looks like you'll have 2 prospects on the World Junior team this year, which is going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, and you mentioned in, I think it was yesterday, or it would have been the day before video, whenever we discussed Fraser Minten last, that it's almost a surefire thing that he makes the team, and you were banging on the money with that. And looking at his stats here, we looked at him the other day, but again, he already played with the Leafs this season after having a great preseason. He's playing okay with the Saskatoon Blades. This is all just good stuff, getting him ready for the actual World Juniors. But then also, of course, I would suspect he plays and starts with the Maple Leafs next season. It's starting to get that time. His impact has been very, very evident, and it'd be nice to get some more youth on this team, similar to how Matthew Nyes kind of showed out this season. So any final thoughts on that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it would be nice to see him on the team next year, some youth, and I think he's a very useful centerman. I think it all depends how the year goes. He just got traded to Kamloops. They haven't lost since he got traded there. I think they're 5-0 or 6-0, something like that. And they're building up. They're in their cycle to go for it. Their window in the WHL. So it looks like they're going to push for a Memorial Cup this year. If he wins a Memorial Cup, great. It's just getting him into more playoff games, more of that experience to make it to the Leafs. So it looks like he's progressing really well, and he could be a Toronto Maple Leaf full time next year.
Yeah, I would suspect, especially depending how preseason goes. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know in the comment section what your thoughts are on this, and let us know if you want David Savard on the Maple Leafs. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.